Well, good evening, everyone. I'm Steve Saunders, the Chief Communications Officer for Westminster Public Schools. We're so glad you could join us tonight. Also, thanks to my counterpart, Melissa Johnson, at Mapleton Public Schools, too. We've been working together to put this presentation for you together tonight. Melissa tells me that Mapleton always regularly hosts community get-togethers via Zoom, as do we. But really, this is the first time we've ever done anything together, and that, I guess, speaks to the importance of this topic. And we've got a lot of people to give diverse perspectives tonight. But first thing we want to do is people begin to log on, and we're now up to 76 participants. Is, as you'll see there on your screen, that this is in both English and in Spanish. So as you log on, you'll see the option as to, do I want to pick a language, either your Spanish or your English preference. You select the choice that you are making, and then we have an interpreter who is going to handle the interpretation for us in Spanish. And she has gotten some notes ahead of time so that she can keep on top of what some of the conversation that is going on in English, so that all ideally will sync up for everybody. And then at the very end, we're going to have a question and answer session as well. So if you go down to the very bottom, you will see the Q&A button tab. And if you click on that, that's a way to submit questions to us. And all of our panelists will be then able to answer those questions for us. So before we get into this, I do want to talk a little bit more about the panelists. We do have a graphic that we're going to put up right now that'll show you all of our panelists tonight, people taking part. As you can see, we've got representatives from education, from law enforcement, and also we're especially grateful to our principals and our students, because they are going to provide a very important perspective for us. And all of it surrounding the topic, of course, tonight, safe community, safe schools. So that's kind of the setup right now. We're at 84 participants. This is being recorded. So if you know people who were not able to participate tonight, we will be sending the link out so that they can take a look at it. And of course, we're encouraging everybody to get back to us with any questions, any comments, any solutions. All of it is welcome. So that's the setup. And at that, I'm going to turn it over now to our superintendents, Charlotte Chancho, Pam Swanson, and Pam, why don't you go first, since I'm always used to saying, here's Pam, here's Pam.
Thank you, Steve. And I want to thank everybody who's helping us with this tonight, and especially those of you who are tuning in. I guess the first thing I'd start with is, this is a big why. Why are we doing this? And we're doing it really for a couple of reasons. Number one, we care about kids and we care about our community. And while we know our kids are safe at our schools, a lot has been happening across our communities, and that's why we've joined up with our friends from Mapleton. And we hope to share some information and raise everyone's awareness. And we have a lot of people who are very capable of doing that. So with that, Superintendent Chancho.
Great, thank you so much, Pam. I appreciate it. So again, we are also really grateful to be here this evening alongside all of these valued and valuable partners between Mapleton Public Schools and Westminster Public Schools, and all of our friends that help keep us safe across our community. Addressing these ongoing impacts of youth violence, we know that we can't do this in isolation of one another. And so we really do need one another to address these issues. We know that the traditional approaches that we've used in the past are not going to bring the desired solutions for these new issues. So we need to be working together, and we hope to be innovative in our strategy so that we can be as effective as possible with our approach. So I'll make some other comments at the end. I do want to make sure we all are clear that across our districts, we know that safety of our students is always our top priority, that we're going to be sharing and listening to best practices in our district, and know that our districts are very aligned in our values and in our hopes and desires for our kids. We have very similar opportunities for our students. So tonight we're going to try not to be too redundant and point out the same things in each of our districts, but we'll highlight a couple of strategies that aren't necessarily unique to our districts, but that really highlight what we're doing as a county, at least in the South Adams County area, to keep our kids safe. So thank you, Dr. Swanson. I'll turn it back.
Okay, thank you, Charlotte. So before we get to our panelists, we do want to share one short piece of video that many of you have probably seen, but there have been a series of incidents that have been very high profile that put this issue front and center for so many people. Had parents reaching out, what are you going to do about this? Internally, a lot of conversations about, you know, we really should change the way we focus this. So this story comes from Fox 31, and it was about an incident here in Adams County in which one student was killed. That was a North High School senior, but it was at an event here in Adams County. 7 other students were injured, and this really, really shook up a lot of people. So to kind of set the stage, we wanted to share this. It is a report from Fox 31 reporter Evan Krugel. So Veronica.
Father of one of those shooting victims.
Kim, he says his daughter may end up paralyzed. Fox 31's Evan Krugel continues our coverage tonight.
This is 16-year-old Joni. Her father says she was leaving that house party when the shots started, one of them catching her in the stomach. It was just after 3 o'clock when bullets started flying.
My daughter was in that crowd. She was struck. She was hit. It entered in through the side and came out the other side.
David Bodnar racing to North Suburban Medical Center in Thornton to find his daughter inside.
She's aware of what's going on, and the doctors have told us that she will survive, and we're trying to find out if she'll be able to walk again or she'll be paralyzed.
Bodnar believes the 16-year-old was out with friends and simply ended up in the wrong place at the wrong time.
It's rough, you know, it's really rough, especially she is such a wonderful child. She actually does great in school, plays sports, gets straight A's, and it's tough to see her like that, you know.
And while he's angry about what happened, his focus tonight is on healing.
You know, I wanted to make sure that she was aware of what had happened and what was going on, and just let her know that we're here for her and we're going to be here for her and we love her and that she's going to be okay. I think that's the most important part.
In Adams County, Evan Krugel, Fox 31.
So that kind of sets the stage for us. Wrong place at the wrong time. I think a lot of people have heard that phrase over and over. So our first group of panelists is going to be our Board of Education directors. And with us tonight, we have Terry Donnell and Mallory Boyce from Mapleton, and from Westminster Public Schools, our Ken Chancho and Christine Martinez. So Terry, why don't we start with you, and what are the thoughts you want to share with this joint community?
Thank you, Steve. I appreciate all of you in joining us tonight, and I hope we'll have a good discussion. I am Terry Donnell. I have been on the Mapleton School Board of Education for a year now. I serve as the treasurer. As a board member and community member, this conversation is important to me because our schools are safe spaces for our students, and our neighborhoods should be safe. I've lived in Mapleton community for 47 years, and both my daughters graduated from this district. We have always been proud to live in Mapleton and want today's students to realize the same success our children realized once graduating from this district. As a board member, I am committed to bringing the best teachers, the best leaders, and the best opportunities to our students. This evening, I hope to learn from you how we can continue to celebrate the great things happening in our communities and prevent violent activities from coming into our community.
Okay, thanks, Terry. So we'll go to Ken Chancho now, who, like you, has a long history in his community as well. Go ahead, Ken.
Thank you, Steve. Welcome, and thank everyone for being here tonight. Thank you, Dr. Swanson and Dr. Chancho, for collaborating on this important issue. You're right, as a lifelong member of Southwest Adams County, as a graduate of Westminster Public Schools, As a current board member of WPS, I'll tell you the safety of our kids, both in and out of the classroom, is priority number one. I'm certainly looking forward to this conversation tonight. I hope it leads to more conversation and great change. Quickly, I'd like to thank Adams County DA Brian Mason for being with us tonight. And of course, Westminster Mayor Nancy McNally, thank you too. And thank again, everyone, for joining us tonight for this important conversation. I really am looking forward to the conversation.
Okay, thanks, Ken. Our next two Board of Education members, and again, we can circle back to questions later, are actually both on the board and also parents as well. So why don't we, as I look through my notes here, Mallory Boyce.
Hi, thanks, Steve. My name is Mallory Boyce, and I've been on the Board of Education for Mapleton Public Schools for the past year. As a community member and a mother of 2 young children in our schools, this conversation is so very important, especially as I see them grow within the community. My children attend a kindergarten through 12th grade school, so it's a wide age range. And the seniors at their school have been there for 13 years, and they build really strong relationships and are really healthy role models for those younger kids. And, you know, I think it's a good setup for our schools. Our 7 small high schools across our district prioritize school culture and productive relationships. And those relationships are so key in making sure that our kids are safe and have a place that they can confide in people and just thrive. We believe that positive relationships among and between our students and staff is a foundation of safe schools and community. And we promote the belief that we all play a part in creating a thriving community. And that's where I will leave it off. I'll hand it back over.
All right, thanks, Mallory. We'll go to our other board member and also mom, and that's Christine Martinez, who's out tonight doing mom stuff. She's in her car because her son is in athletic events tonight. So Christine, I know you have some thoughts to share as well.
Yes, I do. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending and talking about this serious issue. You know, I am a parent and I've been a member of the Board of Education for Westminster Public Schools since 2019, and this issue is very close to my heart. I told the community Tuesday night at our board meeting that I'm so sad that we have to have this conversation, but it is very important that we are having this conversation. Looking the other way just isn't an option. So I'm very proud of everyone for stepping up and being involved. You know, it is easy to talk about the good things, but leadership is really having that hard conversation. You know, and we have to have this hard conversation because it's breaking our hearts every time we are hearing this. And I think the hard part is there's no one single solution, but there are a lot of resources, and as a community, we will get ahead of this. So I'm excited to hear what everybody else has to say.
Okay, thanks, Christine. By the way, we're up to 116 participants. So those of you who may have joined before I made my opening comments, there is a Q&A button down below. So feel free to click on that, submit your question, because after our panelists are done, we're going to circle back and then get into some Q&A. So we talked a little bit about elected officials being a part of this. Steve O'Dorisio, Adams County Commissioner, is out there listening. He's not a panelist, but he's very interested in this issue. It's actually one of his top priorities. So he's involved, he's listening. But also from the city of Westminster, we have Mayor Nancy McNally and a couple of other city council members. And Nancy, thanks for joining us. I know you were with us at our initial planning meeting as well, when we said, hey, should we talk about this? And you said, by all means, go ahead.
I have Councilor Emmons and Seymour with me tonight, and we're here to support all of the entities that are here and to say we do care about our students. We want them to reach their dreams. We want them to grow old and have their kids and grandkids happy and productive lives. We need communication between parents and kids. And parents, if you hear something, don't be afraid to call your police department. Our police department can't do something if they don't know where problems might arise. So communication is key, and we're here to support in any way possible.
Okay, thanks, Nancy. Thank you, council members. All right, so we are going to get now into kind of more the nuts and bolts of identifying the problems, possible solutions, what's being done to deal with that. And we're going to start with District Attorney Brian Mason from the 17th Judicial District, because he oversees both communities. You know, everybody has their police departments, their sheriff's departments, but he kind of has the real big picture. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you set the stage a little bit.
Thank you so much, Steve, and good evening, everyone. It's an honor to be on this panel with all these other distinguished panelists, and I'm so pleased that so many of you have logged in to talk about this important topic. My name is Brian Mason. I'm the District Attorney for Colorado's 17th Judicial District, which includes all of Adams and Broomfield counties. And as Steve said, my office oversees all criminal prosecutions throughout Adams and Broomfield, which means we work with all the municipalities and all the police departments from Adams County. And as I was thinking about what to say tonight, these are the three things that literally keep me up at night when it comes to our kids and crime. The first is youth gun violence. The second is fentanyl. And the third is teen mental health and young people mental health. And let me just talk a little about each of those three topics. First, youth gun violence. So that report that Steve showed earlier from Fox 31 just happened a couple weeks ago, and that happened in our community. And I got called at 3 o'clock in the morning when that gun fight occurred, and I was told that 8 people had been shot. And when I got called at 8 o'clock in the morning, the initial call said 5 of those 8 kids may not make it. Now, thankfully, the 7 out of the 8 survived. 1, of course, died. But when you get a call in the middle of the night that you may have 5 gunshot deaths, it's pretty frightening. And I confess to you that I reject the phrase wrong place, wrong time. I reject that. And if I can leave anything with you parents tonight, particularly on this subject of youth gun violence, you have to know where your kids are. And you have to know whether or not they're someplace with another adult. We had 3 house party shootings in a row in our community, 3 weekends in a row, 3 weekends where I got called in the middle of the night because of a gun party, because of a gunfight. And you'll note from watching that video, as hard as it is to watch, please note this. This wasn't one person shooting and then everyone scattering. You saw somebody shooting and then other people, kids, pulling out their guns and shooting back. So we have kids who are shooting kids and who are carrying weapons and carrying guns. Now, a lot of these guns are stolen, but some of them aren't. And so again, if I can communicate a couple things to remember tonight, if you are a household that has guns, make sure those guns are secured and make sure that you know what your kids are doing or holding on to when they leave the house. Furthermore, all 3 of these house parties that led to homicides, all 3 of them happened in the middle of the night. These calls I'm getting these calls between 2 and 5 o'clock in the morning. You need to have some parameters for kids for how late they're allowed to stay up and when they're coming home. And if they're not coming home, try to figure out a way to get them home, because nothing good happens for a teenager between midnight and 5 a.m. outside of your home. Nothing good happens. So I really urge and encourage all parents to be vigilant about that and to be vigilant about knowing who your kids are hanging out with. It's not just a wrong place, wrong time issue. People shouldn't be out at 3 o'clock in the morning. Teenagers shouldn't be out at 3 o'clock in the morning. My next topic is fentanyl. Fentanyl is the most dangerous drug on the streets right now, and it is pervasive. We are finding fentanyl in everything. We find it in cocaine, we find it in heroin, we find it in meth, we find it most often in oxy pills. In very limited circumstances, we find it in marijuana. And fentanyl is by far the most lethal and most dangerous drug out there, and it is killing our kids. And it is particularly killing kids who have absolutely no tolerance. The people who are most at risk from instant death from fentanyl poisoning are those who are taking fentanyl for the first time when they're just trying out a pill and they don't know what's in it. And that's our young people, middle school students, high school students, college kids, kids in their early 20s. You have to talk to your kids about fentanyl. We have for a while, it was the largest case in the country where 5 people died in Commerce City, and they were taking drugs. They were taking cocaine, and they shouldn't have been. But they didn't know that cocaine was laced with fentanyl, and they all died. This is a public health and public safety crisis, and we have to get the word out about the dangers of fentanyl. So make sure you know where your kids are, and 2, talk to them about fentanyl. Talk to them about the dangers of taking anything when they don't know where it comes from. No drug is safe. Truly, no drug is safe. And unless you have a pill that came from a pharmacist and you saw the pharmacist hand it to you or to your parent or to your loved one, do not ingest that substance. If you can't tell us where it came from, it probably has something in it that's dangerous. Finally, kid mental health. We have an alarming rate of kids who are struggling with mental health. I get calls, from Children's Hospital with reports of some of our suicide attempts, and they're with young people. So we as a community have to really embrace our kids and tell them it's okay to talk to you as parents, to talk to the educators and community leaders on this call when you're struggling. The DA's office has started a mental health line. We call it a lifeline. I'll put that number in the chat. It's 303-835-LIFE. It's monitored by counselors that work for me at the DA's office. That's just a supplement to many other phone numbers that are out there and many other resources that are out there. But mental health issues that kids have then cause them to turn to things like drugs, fentanyl, and cause them to be out in the middle of the night at 3 o'clock in the morning where gunshots are happening. So those are the 3 issues that I'm really focused on when it comes to kids and crime. And I'm eager to take any questions that you all may have later in the hour. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Brian. And we are getting actually some very thoughtful questions, and we're going to get to those as soon as we have gone through our panelists. And we'd also promised people that we would give some advice on how parents can talk to their kids about this issue, because it is uncomfortable, and maybe that's actually something our kids will give us some great insight into. Let's talk about the law enforcement perspective from the people out there on the front lines. And for that, we have both Westminster Police Department and the Adams County Sheriff's Department. Dave Lester, Drew Smith, John Bitterman, Nina Thomas, and Paul Gregory are joining us. And I know you guys talk a lot with each other and coordinate what you're doing, but there are also some district lines. So who wants to go first? I'll make it easy for you. Dave, why don't you go first? Dave Lester is the WPD interim deputy police chief. So Dave, to just kind of give us what you're seeing on the ground.
Thank you very much for that, and thank you, District Attorney Mason, for your comments this evening. My name is Dave Lester, and I'm the interim deputy chief of the city of Westminster, and I've been with the department for 33 years now. We're excited to be here this evening, and thank you for being part of this panel. I didn't prepare any statements up front, but I will pass it on to SRO Sergeant Drew Smith, who works out of the Westminster High School, along with 2 of our SROs. And I'll let Drew take that since he's our hands-on expert on the floor on that one. So I'll pass it off to Drew Smith. So thank you for allowing us to be part of the committee tonight, and I'll pass it off to Drew. Thank you.
We may get back to you with some questions later, Dave, but thanks. Drew, it's up to you.
All right, thanks, guys. Well, thanks for inviting us into your homes, everybody. We appreciate everything that you guys are doing through, and there's no way that I'm going to be able to top what DA Brian Mason said, because we all support the same message that he is. We work really closely with Thornton Police Department, who's not here right now, and they represent the jurisdictions that are represented here today. And I've had some close conversations with him over the last couple of weeks. And like I said, we also share the same message, and I'm sure Under Sheriff Gregory is going to agree with us that what we're going through is the gun violence is out there. It's nothing that we're going to shy away from. But what we need is your help. We need the parents' help. We need the community's help. we're trying to do the community policing, coming together so that you guys can help us do our job. Is that we're out there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We're responding to the calls for service that Dave Mason has articulated throughout his speech. And we just need your help. Just like he said, anything that happens after 12 o'clock at night, nothing good happens. We see it. I've been on the road for 18 years. Under Sheriff Gregory has been here, Commander Lester, Nina Thomas. We've all been out there. We've all seen these kind of things, and we're continuously seeing things. They're stressing us out because we care about our community. We're here because we care about our community. We care about the youth in today's world. We want to help. We want to provide the services that we have. Some of those services that we have is the link. It's a juvenile center that we can take our juveniles to that are going through some issues that can provide mental health resources for them. The city of Westminster has a co-responder program. We're getting into the mental health program where right now we have 3 co-responders that can come out there and help us with these situations. I know that doesn't help at 3 o'clock in the morning, but it helps give us a start. Those parents that are having a hard time communicating with their kids, give us a call. We have the resources to help you, but be involved in their lives. Know what's going on social media. Know where they're going on these parties. Know what they're doing during schools. Ask them questions. And that's the biggest thing that we can ask for our community, is just to get involved in your kids' lives, get involved in their social media accounts. Ask them questions pertaining to what are you doing this weekend? Who are you going out with? Where are you going? Those kind of questions. I know they don't seem like very difficult questions, and sometimes it is, but it just takes courage, vision for us to get involved in our kids' lives. So that's a little bit of the stuff that we're going through here in Westminster. And I speak for Adams County, Thornton, Denver, everybody else when it comes to building trust, is that we understand the national narrative that's out there with the police officers. We understand it. And I can speak on behalf of all of us, is we don't fit that mold here in Colorado. We don't fit that mold in Westminster. We don't fit that mold in Adams County, and we don't fit that mold in Thornton. Is that we're here to build your trust. We're here to communicate with you. We're here to work with you, and we're here to keep the community safe. They talked about schools and keeping the school safe. We're all dedicated to do that. At Westminster High School, we have 2 SROs down there. They're good, solid officers, and they're dedicated to keeping the school safe. They're dedicated to keeping your kids safe, the staff safe, and everyone else safe. So one of the questions I saw in the chat line, and I know I'm probably going to get ahead of it, is how can parents reach out and do this? There's an anonymous tip line out there called Safe to Tell, and there will be a number probably provided into this, is use it. What did the parents ask? Is there a disconnect in it? There is no disconnect. I'm the SRO sergeant for Westminster, and I oversee 3 districts. So I oversee Jefferson County, Adams 12, and Westminster Public Schools. And I get every single Safe to Tell that comes in 24 hours a day. And we look at every single one of them, and we communicate with all of our principals. And that goes up to Adams 12, Westminster Public Schools. Ms. Hewitt, the principal from Westminster High Schools here, we exchange text messages at 2 o'clock in the morning on a weekend basis. I mean, sometimes my wife gets silly because she wants to know who I'm texting at 2 o'clock in the morning. So we're involved in the community. We want to be here. So that's one of them.
Okay, Drew, we're going to get to the ADCO part. Because I think a lot of your information will probably be the same. And we do want to leave time to get to questions as well.
Absolutely.
But I'm glad you did jump ahead to one of those questions, because we are getting some about how that conversation. So Paul Gregory, why don't you talk a little bit about what your team is seeing and doing? And then we're going to talk about what schools are doing.
Thank you. Not much different than what Drew and David talked about, and certainly what Brian had talked about earlier. We work closely with these organizations and will continue to do so. We all share the common concern about school safety. That's no secret. And it's something we take seriously. We always have, and we will continue to do that. I'm not going to tell you about anything that's earth shattering. I can tell you that, believe it or not, our best deterrent for criminal activity is presence. So that's what we're doing. We have presence in schools. We have presence in the area. Gosh, I wish we had twice as many of us, but that's not the case. We have a handful of SROs, and we have a number of schools. And the same goes for our patrol deputies. But we'll look for solutions. I promise you that. And we will listen to any that you might have. And the one thing that we can tell you as an organization, and Drew mentioned it, and I'll reiterate it, is the parents must be involved. Parents that are on this tonight, kids that are on this tonight, students rather, Your involvement tonight is, it means a lot. And what I would ask for you to do when you're at home, if you have friends over and maybe they don't come from the same type of background as you do, maybe they don't have the same strong family like you do, inculcate them with your values. My guess is the folks that are on this tonight are not necessarily the ones that need to hear this message. It's probably others. So do your part to educate others. That's all I have to say. Chief Bitterman's not here, Steve.
Okay, all right, that's good. And we should also mention that Thornton PD was in on the planning meeting as well, but they had some conflicts as well, but they're following this very closely and partnering with this as well. So now we want to go to what is happening at the district level in terms of prevention and awareness. And I know both districts, Mapleton and Westminster Public Schools, have had their head together figuring out what they're going to say tonight, and they've got a joint PowerPoint as well. So Dr. Duffy is going to be joined by Ish Aldana and Daniel Jimenez, and I'll let the three of you kind of take it over, guys.
Why am I not getting any sound? Turn that back on. Sorry. Steve, are you there?
Yep.
Okay, we are having a little technical issues.
Oh.
Does Veronica have the PowerPoint?
There she goes.
Great. So as a school district, and I know our partners in Mapleton share this goal, as does every district in the state, but our goal is to protect students from violence. We want to protect them from the exposure to weapons and threats, bullying, harassment, the sale of it and use of illegal substances, and any other emergency. And to do this, we must take a multi-pronged approach. You just heard from the Adams County Sheriff about presence. We need to be present. We're all responsible for everyone's safety. And to proactively thwart potential school violence, we all need to be aware of warning signs, and we must be comfortable in reporting them. The FBI has reviewed almost all of the school shooter cases. And what they have found is in almost every case, the shooter shared his or her plan with someone else, whether it was through writing, conversation, a social media post. So one thing that we're doing here in Westminster Public Schools is we partnered with a software company to help us with the early detection and or prevention of the violent acts, suicide, and also to help our kids stay away from explicit images. What this program does, it searches for keywords and phrases that are used by students when they're logged on to their WPS Google account. So this is their Gmail, their Google Docs, and their Google Chrome web browsing that is on our network. And I'll stress, it is on our school linked accounts on our network. It's not on their private accounts and a proprietary or other network. If any keyword or phrase or website is flagged, a notice is sent to school administrators and we investigate and take action. Whether that is meeting with the student, providing mental health support for the student, involving law enforcement or social service, but we try to do early intervention. We also encourage everyone to report anything that they find that is suspicious. And one way to do that is through Safe to Tell. You heard Drew Smith talk about that earlier. The number for Safe to Tell is 1-877 Veronica 542-SAFE. It is anonymous, and as Drew said, it is monitored by law enforcement, district personnel, and school principals. One of the other things that we're doing to keep students safe in school, we have regular meetings with our public safety partners, police, fire, and emergency medical services. We have a crisis response tabletop exercises with law enforcement where we work through scenarios and talk about our response, identify how we can improve on our services for students. Each school has specific emergency plans. We have building level crisis teams. We debrief the school's drills and exercises as part of our continuous improvement cycle. And each school has a threat assessment team, and you'll hear from Ish here in just a little bit about threat assessment. And then, of course, we conduct our regular drills: fire, active shooter, hazmat, and tornado. We also look at safety through environmental designs. All of our schools have secured entries with visitor check-in and on-site background checks, so we know who's coming into our buildings. We have cameras and other enhanced safety resources. During the school day, we restrict public access to our playgrounds and our buildings by limiting the entrance and exit points along the perimeter of the school site. And we do other enhanced district communication, both inter and intra-building. So if we have an emergency in one building, we're able to alert others. So, we're all on the same page here in the district. And then finally, we recognize that from that last school bell of the day to the time families get home from work, this is a time where our kids have unstructured, unsupervised time. So here in Westminster Public Schools, we partnered with the Boys and Girls Club to help provide out of school time that is structured. They do 2 sites for us, Hidden Lake and CSLA. And they also run a summer program. And this truly is a collaborative or community collaborative initiative, because we provide or receive additional support from the City of Westminster and the Adams County Commissioners to support the clubs. And then finally, we also provide recreational and structured sports activities for all of our students, starting in kindergarten through high school. It's a program we started last year. Our youth programs offer football, basketball, baseball, softball, basketball, wrestling. And last year, we served over 1,100 students. So in addition to the structured activities, these programs connect students with caring adults. Our coaches, their parents, it brings families into our schools, and it helps us create a stronger sense of community. And that's kind of a whirlwind on some of the activities. And now I'm going to turn it over to Ish and Mapleton to talk about threat assessments.
Good afternoon, everybody. Muy buenas tardes, bienvenidos. I want to discuss here our process, and I want everybody in the community here to understand that everybody in this panel and all agencies involved recognize that an effective learning and teaching environment takes place in safe and secure and welcoming environments, which includes our communities. One of the tools we have in place in order to do that allows us to identify these avenues is our threat assessment process. The threat assessment process was something that really became and gained a lot of momentum through the Claire Davis Act, which holds us accountable, and I would say more responsible in searching for best practices on how to reasonably care and protect all students, faculty, and staff, and our communities, and all our personnel around our schools. To talk a little bit more about the threat assessment, it is a tool used by our schools to help ensure a safe environment in the threat assessment, and it's the threat assessment process. The threat assessment process is an essential component of a comprehensive safe school environment. And it also helps us assess unwanted potential harmful behavior. We definitely take this process serious in our schools. We have lots of communication around what needs to be done and identified. However, getting back to some of the points made today in parent involvement and knowing where our kids are and recognizing what our presents are. We have to stay in communication with what our kids are saying, what they're doing, and what kind of friendships they may be having, who they are communicating with. Sometimes when we identify these threats, I want to make sure that our community and our parents know that yes, it is a very invasive questioning process. However, we need to get down to what the information is. What are our kids telling us? We have to listen to our youth, right? So when a threat is made, whether it's verbal, written, or gestured, we have to take a protocol, which is our threat assessment process. If there is an imminent threat to others, we have to stop, call 911, partner up with our security teams, make sure that the threat isn't imminent. In that event, our threat assessment process then starts. Our process helps identify possible stresses and emotional issues and current setbacks our students may be having and coming to school with, which may be leading to the behavior they are displaying. At the time most of our screeners happen, most of the time we're able to identify what our students are going through and what support services we're able to provide around them. What we would really like to communicate and want our communities to know is that our threat assessment is supportive and not punitive in nature. It is separate from any criminal proceedings that may be happening when an event arises. However, we want to make sure that all information is transparent and we're able to communicate and keep our schools and students safe. It helps guide practices for interventions based on individual needs and helps identify needed resources for students and families. We are really committed to connecting our families to support. There are two levels of a threat assessment. There's a screen level that I mentioned, and then there's a full threat assessment. In the event that a full threat assessment is needed, it is for reasons that we are unable to obtain information. That's when it is important for parents to communicate with us, establish a partnership to help identify what may be going on with our youth today. Students have, we might identify some significant behavior history that you may not be identifying at home, or you're not aware at home, so that we can, and we're able to communicate that with you in order for you to help your student and us support them at school. If there are many unanswered questions, we would definitely dive into a longer threat assessment process at that time. Most agencies in the surrounding areas, I know we do, and I know Westminster does too, but Adams 12 and a lot of other school districts that surround us have flow charts of how to respond to threats made, whether again they're verbal, written, or gestured. Here's a glance at ours. I know it might be a little bit small to see, but definitely helps guide the process and helps provide our schools and our principals, assistant principals, a direction on how to assess a threat appropriately.
Okay. All right, so we will get back to the question part after we open this up to the community, because we are getting now up to 20 questions, and we want to now get a sense of what's going on at the high school level, and then we're going to get to our kids. And principals Kiffany Kiewit and Tiffany Dragoon from Global Leadership Academy in Westminster High School, also Gabe Trujillo, who's also with us at Westminster High School. And a lot of the comments have talked about alternatives for kids, positive things they can be doing. And I know that's high on Gabe's radar as well. So principals, you can dive in. Probably the quicker the better, because we're running a little bit late and we definitely want to hear from the kids as well. So Kiffany and Tiffany. Tiffany, why don't you go first?
All right. Hi, everyone. So really, just to echo some of the things I've heard, are really just that responsibility to build relationships with all kids. I think that's one of my primary roles as, a principal of a high school, is to know everyone, support them, connect them, help them find connections, if our kids have friends or a trusted adult in the school or involved in a club or a sport, like all those things, those connections help them feel like a part of the community. And when they feel like a part of the community, they can then feel like, I want to protect this community and I want to support this community. So I think something that we try to do is really work on restorative practices and ways, teach kids other ways to solve problems besides being aggressive or violent. And so that's just something that we're really trying to hang on to here at Global Leadership Academy in Mapleton. Tiffany, what are some things you've been thinking about?
Thank you. I echo everything everyone else has said. I think, I've been asked today to be a panelist because I'm a principal, but I'm also a mom, and a mom of 2 high school age students and a college age student. So there is no harder job than worrying about your kids every day. But I think the communication that we need to really think about is from family to family as well. So we've talked about communication in between schools and families, but family to family, and know who your kids are hanging out with and know who the families are that they're with. We have a rule in our home that, you don't leave the house unless we know who you're with and who their family is, and we know where you're going. And it's a hard thing being there's no harder job than being a teenage parent right now, being parents of teenagers. It's hard to say no to our kids sometimes. No, you can't go there. I'm sorry. That's not where you're going to be tonight. If you want to figure out another plan, great. But the communication that we need to have from family to family is so important right now, because we need to come together as a community to make sure that we know where our kids are every minute of the day. The video that Steve showed, it hurts my heart every time that I see it, because those kids did not need to be in that situation. Because they had a choice. And I agree with the DA that, wrong place, wrong time. There's a choice to be in the right place at the right time as well. So that's just kind of my soapbox and from my heart. But we're doing a lot of things at Westy as well to keep students in a good place and going to good things. We've increased a lot of our after school activities, and we've increased a lot of our events. So having more dances, having carnivals, those kind of things that the kids we know then are safe there. So our kids will have a lot to say as well. So I want to give them a lot of time.
We want to get to them. So Gabe, I know you've got a couple of programs to talk about, and then we really want to spend some time with the kids. So Gabe. Oops, you're on mute, Gabe.
Sorry, as a parent of 2 Westy kids, a resident and employee of WPS, this is dear to our heart. So I echo what everybody says. We offer a program, K through 12 athletic program. We focus specifically on K through 8 at the younger ages to make healthy connections and positive decision making. So for the parents who are looking for a healthy option, I also know Mapleton Public Schools does, and we're in the collaborative business, so we're not here to steal any kids. Really, if you want to connect kids and you can't find resources, give us a call. We'll connect them. We know a lot of the coaches over in Mapleton will help you out. We have a program. The last thing I'll say is, with our students, keep an eye out for each other and look out for each other. You're our best resource. And then to our parents, stay vigilant. And if, keep communicating with the school on anything that's going on. If you need more resources and want to have some questions about some athletics, programming and activities, you can find us at westyathletics.com. You can direct message me or email me, and we can sit down and help you create a plan. The last thing is, don't be alone in the fight. You have plenty of schools and a lot of good people here who care about you. So we want you to make healthy decisions.
Okay, thanks, Gabe. So principals, stick around because we're going to talk to the kids, and I know you know them best, so you can maybe kind of relive some of the conversations you've had. But our 4 students are Carlos Taronga Duenas from Westminster High School, Ashley Allen, also Westminster High School, Esteban Munoz, and Brenda Cabrera Perez. They are from the Global Leadership Academy. And guys, thanks for being here. And as I've been saying all night, I think the community's most interested to hear from you guys. And so there really is no time limit here. You can ask each other questions, principals dive in too. So, and I'm just looking at my screen as to guessing who to start with. Let's start with Esteban. Esteban, just kind of fill in for people. What is it like now being, I know you're a senior. What's your world like these days?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. I really appreciate it. Being a senior in high school isn't how it was back then when I was in elementary school. Like majority of the parents now, they're scared to send their kids to school. They live with the fear of asking themselves, is my kid safe where he is going? Is he actually showing up to school? A senior like myself, I question that quite a bit. I question if something's going to happen at school today, if I feel safe at school, or in general, if I just want to be at school. It's crazy on how the world came to be from several years ago. It's sad to see communities, schools, and other people just kind of fall on each other.
Okay, so we got a lot of questions that we're going to ask of you guys, but first let's hear from all of you, and then we're going to get right back to you. Ashley Allen, what's it like for you in these days? I mean, for us to hold this meeting, I mean, obviously it's on parents' radar. Is it on students' radar?
Thank you for having me. And yes, I would definitely say it's on our radar.
Hey, Ashley, can you lean into your mic just a little bit?
Yes, sorry. It's definitely a thing for us. We go to school and, we do what we need to do. But there's always that thing in the back of our head saying, like, is everything okay? Like, am I safe here? Are we really, like, safe, if you get what I mean? And I think it's definitely a thing we need to address and talk about in order to help fix it and, like, reduce the anxiety levels when we are at school.
Okay. Carlos, same kind of a question. How widespread is this among you and your friends talking about it and being nervous about, this should not be something high school kids have to deal with?
Well, first off, thank you for having me. But it's something me and my friends have been, kind of spectacle about, because, we were like kind of the first people to find out about the shooting. We were on the bus ride back home, and we had found out, one of our, close friends had got injured in the shooting. And, it was just kind of like a sudden shock moment, because, we always mess around, there's always like fights on the internet, in school, but we never just thought like this would happen at such a like high level. But yeah, I mean, there's always like a thought in the back of our heads that, anything can happen. So, we just have to surround ourselves, with the right people, with the administrators. And I think they do a great job at that, keeping us safe in school. I feel safe in school, but, there's always a thought in the back of my head, you never know what could happen. But yeah.
That's not particularly a healthy way to live. I know that's so different from us. Brenda, we're going to hear from you, and then we're just going to talk with the four of you and your principals, because there's a lot of just everyday questions that, and anybody panelists you want to weigh in too, feel free. So Brenda, that same kind of perspective, as a student in high school, is it something that weighs on your mind? What do you see? What do you just your perspective?
I mean, first off, thank you for having me, of course. But in high school, like, there's a bunch of things that we do have to think about, and especially for the safety of every student, because there have been a lot of rumors at school and things like that of students having weapons, and it's just like a thing that we don't know if it's true or not. But I do see every day at school, like, everyone seems safe, but then deep down we do tend to think it's like, are we really safe? Because every day we do go to school and have the thought that a shooting could randomly happen, or like someone could come to school with a weapon and hurt another student. Because I did recently translate for conferences at middle school, and a mother did tell me that her child has been leaving off campus, and that worries me, because as a high schooler, like, I obviously lived through my middle school life, and I wouldn't want like a middle school child to get harmed off of campus and like have their mother like thinking I dropped him off at school and he's at school, he's safe, when in reality he's off campus, and like something that could happen to him, and like the mother wouldn't even know. So like that was something that had worried me, and I wanted to relate to that what had Esteban said. But Um, uh, I don't know.
Okay, let me ask all four of you, just to give you a heads up, you can think about it and we'll just kind of go the same way. What, Esteban, if you were to tell a parent, how should you talk to your kid about this issue? I mean, I know a lot of parents say, oh, I don't want to, my kids are almost adults or whatever. But do most kids want to hear from their parents? Maybe that would be a good message.
I feel like most kids should listen to their parents since they were once our age. It might have been different back then, but it's always nice to sit down and talk with a grown up, ask them questions if how do I handle this situation, or just simply have your parent tell you like, hey, this is what you should do. This is when you should be home. It's
So
just a
just
matter.
for a parent out there who says, God, I don't know how to start this conversation. What's worked with you and your parents? You get
What my parents do with me is whenever they come home from work, they ask me how my day was at school. And I say if it was either good, okay, or if it was bad. But every day they tell me if I want to talk about my day at school. I feel like that's a good like conversation starter for a parent, like to be waiting for their kid to come home, to be like, hey, how's your day at school? And if he or she just simply walks in his room, I say go follow behind he or she and really talk about it, because there's always something in the back of our heads that it's either bothering us or we just don't want to talk about.
Okay, no, that's good. Ashley, same kind of question. What's been your parents' approach, and what would you tell another parent who says, boy, I just don't quite know how to talk about this?
Would agree with Esteban, mainly like asking how school was that day, just getting more comfortable. And then a lot of what my family does is that we address what's going on within the community, like shooting, stuff like that, and like how it's affecting us, how it's making us feel. And going forward, I feel like families could do that, so the kids could get a real, like, more in-depth understanding of how it's affecting our community and how they should like be safe.
So good parenting is not just everything's great, it's sometimes those hard conversations. Carlos, how do your parents talk to you about some of these issues?
I mean, I've always had a good relationship with my parents, so I've always been comfortable with telling them things because, they've just always been, they've always had their ears open, they've always been willing to listen to me. But I think talking with them like one-on-one is very good. And I think parents can do this by, just not like judging kids, like judging your kids for what they're telling you. Like if they're telling you something, it's because they're comfortable with telling you it, and you shouldn't judge them or resent them for telling you it. And, at least they're telling you, because, some kids like to hide stuff from their parents. And I just think it's good to sit down with them and talk with them and, just not judge them for it.
Okay, that's
just really listen to them.
All right, so Brenda, we'll finish this round of questions with you too. I think, parents sometimes say, oh, I don't want to turn my kids off and, have them afraid to talk to me saying, oh, my parents are coming after me. But it's important to have those kind of conversations, right?
I do believe yes, but in a perspective, and also because like it's a situation that I've been going through. Sometimes kids are afraid to tell their parents things because they don't know how they're going to react. Also because parents do tend to overreact at these situations. But I do think it's important for a parent to talk to their son or daughter and just make sure that they know what's going on in their life, to make sure that they're safe and that they feel okay mentally and physically, because oneself doesn't want to be suffering with these like issues. So I do believe parents should check in with them, and if they like feel comfortable about it, they should talk about like if they had a similar situation so that they could relate to it. And like, it's like this could happen to you. Like, I'm not saying like it can, but it could. So then it's like from kids' perspectives, they can see and say like, oh, well, they're right. But I think parents should talk to their kids as well and just let them know like, hey, like if you ever need a person to talk to, go talk to me, talk to like a teacher, a friend, just someone that you trust. But all that it is important right now is just for you to be safe.
Okay, we're gonna get to some of these questions, but Tiffany, I saw you nodding a lot about this. And you also have that perspective of being a parent. You know, share that good advice. How do you start that conversation with kids? Because you want to have open conversations.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely hard. I've learned more having high school age kids, and it's made me a better principal because the conversations that we have at home are more real and more in depth, and they're honest. And I really liked what Carlos was saying about don't judge your kids. The kids growing up now have such a different experience than we had. I grew up in a very different different area of the country than I'm living in now and raising my kids in now, and it's just a different perspective. And to not judge our kids, and if they sit down and they tell you some stuff that might be affecting you, you kind of have to sit there and just let them tell you and let them get it out so that you can be the adult in the situation and have the conversation about how you can help them. The other thing is even though I'm in the schools, my husband's a police officer, we have a lot of experience with kids and community. I still need help. I reach out all the time to our counselors at school. I reach out to community members. I reach out to my family, to our friends. It literally takes a village to raise one child. And in our community, we all have to come together right now. And I know I said this before, but we have to come together to help each other and keep those lines of communication open, no matter what is going on, whether it's positive or negative. We celebrate our kids a ton. We need to talk about the hard stuff too. Like Christine mentioned earlier, is that this conversation is not fun to have, but it's one that we have to have right now. Because I don't want to get calls from Sergeant Smith at 2 a.m. I don't want to see these things on the news, as none of us do. And so I think being open and honest with your kids and telling them about your mistakes. I was not a perfect child. My parents will tell you I was not a perfect child, but I share those stories with my kids and tell them I screwed up big time, but learn from my mistakes and don't make the same ones I did. So sorry, Steve, I could say this all night.
No, I know you.
I'm going to be quiet.
And I think earlier what you had said, help me help you, is kind of, or help, however you phrased it, it was so good. But, all right. Hey, I realized I forgot Daniel Jimenez there, Daniel. You can weigh in because I know you deal with kids too. I don't know if you're a parent or not, but maybe you could just give us a perspective as well.
So my name is Daniel Jimenez. I recently took over the Director of Security for Mapleton Public Schools. I just retired from the city of Thornton after 22 years in law enforcement. Out of my 22 years, I was an SRO for 13 years in 2 different schools in Adams 12, as well as I've been a coach for 25 years. So my kid perspective and working with them is making sure we listen to them and seeing, what trends are going through or what stresses they may be facing at this time in life. It's always that big thing of communication. I mean, the kids are always going to be front line, and we have to not judge them, but have them be able to open up to someone new or different that's just going to listen and maybe give them a different perspective than the typical mom or dad that they think they're afraid to tell, have that opening conversations with them. Another quick thing about one of the safety things that we've implemented when we hear things going around campus is I like to get my schools involved and tell my administrators, directors to say, hey, if we could have staff members step out and they all wear their safety vests and we spread out through campus, they know that, everyone can feel safe. We're unified. Teachers are out, teachers are visible. There's not a bright vest anywhere amongst the crowd that you can't see. So it gives, everyone a sense of feeling that they're safe, and we're all doing our part to keep everyone safe on that campus that day.
Good. So let's get to some of these questions. So one that has come up several times, and maybe some of our law enforcement or Brian can speak to this, is how do you build that relationship so that kids trust police? There's been several references like they just don't feel comfortable going to them to give them some information. So Drew, maybe you could speak to that about creating that relationship where, you're not drawing lines on either side of an issue.
We're approachable. We're normal people. I mean, we all have kids. We all have families. I mentioned earlier the national narrative, and we don't fit that. Is that I can attest to that. Westminster, we have 190 officers in there, and we all want to make you guys feel safe. We all want to make the community feel safe. And we all want you guys to be able to come to us and approach us and just open up to us, because we're going to listen to you guys and we're going to offer help. And it's probably the same message that Thornton's going to give you and that Adams County is going to give you, is that we aren't bad guys. We're normal human beings. We care for people. There's a bunch of people in this audience right now that are officers, and I don't know how else I could say it, but I'm sorry if you feel that you can't come to us. And I apologize on behalf of the law enforcement community, but being in the profession for 18 years, I can assure you that all of Westminster officers are listening to you. We want to listen and we want to help you.
So that's something you guys work at or you're trained about, is, you're not just there for the bad stuff. And I know you guys celebrate with our kids for the good stuff too, whether it be a football game or whatever. So it just needs to be a continual process.
Yeah, and we understand that, and we want to work on that. And it's different times, just like everyone said from a couple of years ago, is that we understand that we need to approach things differently. The House Bill 217 came out a couple years ago, and that's prevented us from doing a couple things, but it's helped us. There's been a lot of negative thought process behind 217, and overall it's really helped, I think, the relationships that we have with each other, and the way that we investigate crimes and the way that we get in out of the communities. Our interim deputy chief police chief Norm Hobart, as well as all the other ones, are big on community policing. That's the biggest thing that we talk about, is that's the only way that we're all going to get better, is by coming together. And we understand that we need your help just as much as we do, and we need to change the way that we approach situations and we communicate with people. And we understand that in the city of Westminster, and we're working hard to overcome those obstacles that you guys are talking about.
Okay, thanks, Drew. All right, back to superintendents, because this question came up. Do we need to have at schools metal detectors? Pam, I know at one point this came up, and maybe Board of Education members have a perspective too. We'll start with you, Pam, because I know you've thought about it, and then we'll talk to Charlotte.
Yeah, it's definitely a conversation that we have had, we continue to have, and there's a delicate balance between having a welcoming school and having a school that feels like a prison. What I will tell you is a promising practice that we're exploring right now is with technology, with artificial intelligence. And we're looking at other things that wouldn't be as symbolic of maybe not being welcoming, but being able to detect if something does walk into a school that isn't something that should be there. And so, Charlotte, you may want to add to that.
Yeah, I think our approach here in Mapleton is a little bit different because our schools are so small. Our high schools are all 400 students or fewer. So with these small schools and the adults know every kid, we know if somebody's approaching a school that doesn't belong there, right? So we have a lot of passive security in our district, a lot of cameras and ways that are not as obvious, but that are very present to know if we have the right people in the building or not.
Yeah. And maybe one of our safety officials from both either district can talk about, because that scares the daylights out of everybody, think about guns at schools. But it's my understanding it's not prevalent. I mean, yes, it does happen, but maybe one of you or maybe the DA can speak to that. You know, how prevalent are guns out there? Let's start with Brian Mason.
Well, I think our police departments may be in a better place to answer that question, Steve. I can tell you that people do sometimes bring guns into schools. And the most important message that I can share is for parents to tell your kids to tell somebody. What's one of the most dangerous situations is when somebody says, I knew that there was a gun, but I didn't want to turn them in. I didn't want to be a snitch. I didn't want to get myself in trouble. I didn't want someone to be angry at me. We've got to create a culture in our schools where kids across the board will tell an adult if they know that somebody has a weapon. It's in their best interest. It's in the best interest of their friends. That's the culture we have to create.
So Ish, Daniel, James, any thoughts on that? You don't need to, go into great detail about it, but what do you guys see on the front lines?
Yeah, we definitely.
Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Dan.
I mean, we've had some instances that we've had guns on campuses that the kids have reported, but it's not been real guns. It's the perspective of kids, you know, they open up their bag and show something off. At the point, it looks like real to them, and we take every count serious. You know, we're gonna deal with each situation. Thankfully, that we've been able to grab these toy guns or BB guns with no further incident. But the fact is, just to bring it in for whatever reason they may be thinking it's a cool thing to do or attention thing. Some people say it's for protection. You know, there's other things behind it that we need to get into the mix with these kids, because if they're feeling unsafe or they're feeling like someone's bullying them, we got to see how we could support them and help them, or help them cross and deal with the issues they may be facing with another classmate.
Okay. Any of our high school students, you know, and I don't want to put anybody on the spot. I mean, how widespread is it out there that you hear, oh, did you see this guy? He's got a gun, or it's in his car, or, and if you don't want to answer, that's fine too, because I don't want to put anybody on the spot. That's a hard pass. That's good. That's fine. James, did you have any thoughts? I know we take, it's a zero tolerance policy. I know that.
Well, what I would say, Steve, you know, like DA Mason, like our colleagues over at Mapleton have said, we would be disingenuous if we said we did not have guns on campus. How prevalent, I can't say, but what I can say is students, parents, and community members have been very crucial in helping us identify students that we need to reach out to and have a conversation with. Safe to Tell is an excellent way to do that. And in this district, we have had a number of reports that have led to investigations and then involvement with law enforcement. And the anonymous reporters have just contributed to the safety of the schools. So I would say, if you see something, if you know something, report it.
Okay. Another very specific question that our school district people can speak to, security cameras. Maybe people don't realize that how widespread they are and how helpful they are. James and the guys from Mapleton, do you want to talk about that?
Well, we have cameras in all of our buildings. We were talking about that as a team earlier today. We currently have over 300 cameras across the district. We are looking at increasing that to about 500 over the next year or so. So
okay.
I can tell you that our cameras have actually helped us in identifying when a student may not be truthful in why they're carrying a weapon, or there's some activity that may be happening, and then we're able to investigate that and provide support services around that student, provide safety nets around that student. So our cameras are definitely a very big key to what we do, and I'm sure Dan would agree, and all the security personnel here, that it does help us identify a lot of issues that we may not have identified without them.
Okay. So Brian, I got this from your webpage. You talked about young people and guns. And actually, it is now the leading cause of death for children ages 1 through 17, at least in 2018. And it's just, I mean, obviously you have the criminal shooting people, but it's also a lot of just carelessness, right? I mean, kids playing with a gun or showing off with the gun. I mean, we probably can't emphasize that enough.
Agreed. Can't emphasize it enough. Gun safety is absolutely critical. Back to parents knowing where your kids are. You also have to know when they're in someone else's house, if that house is a gun house. And if it is, that the guns are being locked up properly and that they are safe. So you really have to be aggressive as a parent to know about where your kids are, who they're with, the families who they're with. Obviously, this is a country that values self-defense and the Second Amendment, but you still need to make sure that those guns are being kept safely. And there are laws in Colorado that actually require it. and parents need to make sure that that those are being followed.
Yeah. So that there is that component about parent responsibility, whether it be guns or kids drinking at your house or whatever. And anything you can share with us about that, about liability for parents who.
Yeah, I saw the question in the chat about parents who are allowing these house parties to happen. So I can't talk specifically about these individual cases, but I know in one of the cases it was reported publicly that the house was rented on VRBO or whatever website it is. So that makes it tricky, obviously, in that kind of an example. Some other ones that we've seen, the parents aren't around, so they're out of town. And that's another cautionary tale. If you're leaving town and you have high school age kids who are old enough to be home alone, you have to have some parameters for what they can do and what they can't do while they're home, to make sure that they're safe. But to your specific question, Steve, yes, if an adult is permitting, allowing, or facilitating a young person in having alcohol or giving alcohol to other kids or allowing huge parties where there's alcohol, drinking, and guns, that parent can be held accountable for that.
Okay. So maybe back to some of our high school kids. So we had heard when we first put this panel together about the problem sometimes is that it's a small party where you know everybody there, and then it just blows up into a huge party. You don't know half the kids there. Is that accurate? And what do you do about that? I guess short of leaving when people show up that you don't want to be hanging with. Anybody?
I think we can prevent that by, sharing it out with like our friends. Let's say we're gonna have a small party at somebody's house. I think it's important to share the fact that, hey, if somebody else shows up we don't know, we have to like enforce that we don't want them there. We have to tell them we don't want them there, because if somebody that you don't know shows up, you never know what can happen, because that person can invite other people and it can just turn into a bigger thing than it has to be. So I think it's important to not let that happen. As soon as we start to see something unfold, we have to stop it before it becomes something bigger.
Okay. So that is an experience out there that happens.
Yes.
Okay, anybody else?
I would like to add on to what Carlos said. I feel like he is correct. Another way that you can prevent something like bigger to happen is limiting the people that you have at a house party or at an event. Knowing who's going to show up and who's not going to show up will also help. Because like you said, in many cases, someone can show up that you don't know. They bring a friend. Maybe that friend doesn't like someone at the party, and then there you go. There's that whole huge altercation that can happen.
Yeah. So it's just being real clear with everybody up front. You don't have to be confrontational about it, but like this is a friends only party kind of a thing, and that's okay. Okay.
That's
okay.
Sorry about that.
All right, let's go back to somebody who's been here a long time. Terry, do you remember having to have these kinds of conversations when you were a young person growing up here? I mean, it's just a whole different world, and you're on mute.
Yes, I do. It's not a big difference necessarily. I mean, I think that you would invite friends over to your house if your parents were absent, and I don't think it's as prevalent that a bunch of kids that you weren't familiar with would show up. But it was basically, if you had friends over, they kind of kept it on the down low that they're meeting at my house, and it wasn't really a problem way back when.
So Mallory, tell me again, how old are your kids?
They are 7 and 12.
Okay. So the 12-year-old, maybe you're starting to have these conversations just.
Yeah, I think it's important that she's aware of what's out there, so she knows how to keep herself safe and make smart decisions. It's what we want for all of our kids, is them to be able to go out in the world without us and make smart decisions. And It's an important conversation that every parent needs to have with their child.
Yeah. Christine, I see you nodding your head too. You've got a young son. I mean, you know, it's great to talk about how'd you do at your baseball game tonight, but sometimes you have to go into some tough topics.
Yeah, you really do. And, you know, I think it starts, you have to start building your trust with your kids, that they can trust in you. And you hear a lot about you have to have that hard conversation, but I think it is a continual conversation. If you don't get an answer on that first ask, it's okay. It's asked again and have another ask. And, you know, sometimes I find my son will open up to me more on his terms than mine. So I'll ask the question of how was your day? And then 30 minutes will go by and something else comes up. And then I hear more of what's going on, but it's giving him that time and space for him to respond to me. And so it's from a parent side, don't get agitated and give up if they don't answer you right away. Keep asking, give them time, and they will open up and talk to you.
Okay. And I see Esteban nodding his head there too. Has that been your experience?
Yeah, I agree to what she said because sometimes we don't really want to open up to it on the spot, you know. We want to say go hop on like on our Xbox or talk on the phone with somebody and then come back and say, oh, like, hey, this is what really went on. So yeah.
Okay, so patience. Hey, Tiffany and Tiffany, we have quite a few questions about safe to tell. How often is that? How is that spread with kids? And maybe somebody else can speak to the process as well. And as you do that, Veronica has a graphic put up that has the safe to tell number as well. But Tiffany, how do you talk to your kids about it? And I know it's on their lanyards, et cetera, right?
Yeah, so it's on the back of all of our students' ID. And so students have to have, yep, there it is. Students have to have their ID to be in the building. They also need to have it to get on the bus. So their IDs are with them all the time. We also do a lot of lessons in our, what we call our academic enrichment course, which every student in the building has around how to talk to an adult when you have a concern, what safe to tell is, how it works. And it's very simple and parents can use it as well. It's that number and there is somebody on the other line that will ask you some more questions, but I get a report immediately. I have a text that goes to my phone, an email that goes to my email, and then also that also goes to our school resource officers and their Sergeant Smith that referenced it before. And it is immediate. And if I didn't follow up on something, Safe to Tell will contact me almost within the half hour to say, is there a resolution for this yet? Because it's not just a report, there's also a resolution that has to be made. And so it's very immediate and it's very effective. And honestly, it's where we get a lot, I'd say a majority of our good information.
Okay, Tiffany, anything you want to add?
I think I would just add that something that we are trying to make sure our students understand, and families too, that if you're making a report, the more information and detail you can share within that report, the better. Because when we get something nebulous that says someone is doing something and it might be someday next week, then it's harder for us to investigate. But so more detail is better. And exactly what Tiffany said, our process is the same, I think, across all the schools about who's notified and how we all have to follow up. And it's a great system, and we have signs posted all around the school everywhere. I like the ID idea, though, Tiffany. Having it on the ID is a good idea.
Yeah, and that's, I think, one thing we're trying to get tonight is everybody share best ideas. So we're now almost at an hour and a half. We said an hour, but that's okay. So we're going to turn it back to Charlotte and Pam to have some closing thoughts. Well, actually, before we do that, anybody have something they absolutely have to say that we never got to?
I would like to add something to parents,
Okay.
something that's extremely important in the communication and the knowing about your kids and what they may be accessing. One of our questions in our threat assessment is, does your student have access to weapons? We are not in the business of wanting to violate your Second Amendment or take your weapons away. We're in the business of wanting to understand where your student might have accessed the weapon. It might not even have been from your own home. We just need to know so that we can help and provide better information or good information to redirect why this is happening. So, we really want to really hone in on the communication piece. Like, please work with us, trust us. Your kids are safe with us. We just want to make sure that we are doing everything we can to keep everybody safe.
Okay. Anybody else before we get to our superintendents? Okay. Any students? Did you have anything you wanted to add? Brenda? Thank you for being here. Okay, guys. All right, Charlotte, we'll toss it to you now.
Great, thank you. I'm going to keep it very brief since we are over, and just thank everyone for spending a little bit of time with us. It makes me so very proud, especially to hear our kids' voices and to hear those staff members who are supporting our kids and lifting our kids up, to know that as a whole community, from our DA to our law enforcement partners, the schools, the kids, all of us are in this together. And so it makes me really proud and hopeful that we can tackle this issue together. We've done it before. We are a community that can deal with challenges and embrace them and just nip it in the bud. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for taking the time with us. Westminster Public Schools, thank you for inviting us and for putting this together for us this evening. I hope this is the first of several conversations that we have about next steps in this Adams County area, and that we move forward with it. I know there are several questions that people have. I hope we can get together as our two school districts and respond to those questions on our websites or somewhere that you can get to them. Know that we are paying attention to what your questions are, and we hope to be able to respond to them. Okay. So Dr. Swanson, thank you for inviting us tonight.
Hey, Pam, before you go, I should mention that there's a lot on here about mental health, and we do have a graphic that talks to community reach, that they're available. And I know both schools also have I think that graphic's coming up. There it is, the Community Reach Center, which supports both Westminster Public Schools and Mapleton. And there is also Colorado Crisis Services for emergency situations. And we'll put all this on our websites too, but that's a 24-hour number that immediately jumps in and helps people, because we know these are stressful times. Now it's your turn, Dr. Swanson.
Oh, that's fine. In fact, I was going to say we can certainly put those resources up. I know we have a lot of them on our website. I know Mapleton does too. I started the evening by saying we're all here because we care. And I'm going to end the evening by saying that too. And it was so wonderful to hear so many passionate people in our community. And for those of you who showed up and listened, we appreciate you. And we're a big Adams County family when you get down to it, and whatever's going on that shouldn't be going on, remember, this is our house. This is our community, and we're stronger together. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody.